Hauntings of Ernie. It was September on a cool, clear day. It was late in the month, so fall was in the air and the leaves on some of the trees were just beginning to change. That night, my friends Colin, Steve, Frank, Chad, and I would head into town for a ghost tour. We were all pretty excited as none of us had done something like this before, and we knew that the tour would go all around the town, giving detailed stories about locations and the people associated with them. The five of us agreed to meet at 7:30 in front of the restaurant called Weber's Alley, a local bar and grill in town. It was also where the tour would begin from. We were wisening up though from our past trips with Chad, who was always at least 10 minutes late on average. We told Chad that we were actually going to meet at 7:20, 10 minutes before the actual meetup time. I hopped in my car and drove into town. I paid for parking in the parking garage and found a space to pull into. However, as I was disconnecting my phone from the aux cord, I caught a glance of a blue minivan slowly pulling into the space next to me. It did not do a good job parking either. It parked so close to my car that I had to climb into the passenger seat to get out. I was pissed, not gonna lie, and so I stormed around to the driver's side window of the minivan and signaled for them to roll down the window, and that they did. I was then able to witness who exactly it was. It was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. Herbert seemed to be in some sort of trance state of mind as he appeared to be meditating. He even sat crisscross in the seat, with his fingers in that stereotypical ring pose. "Yo! Herbert!" I exclaimed.
The spirit of Frankie will be present tonight,
Herbert said calmly, taking a deep breath.
Herbert,
answer me, I demanded. Just then, Herbert broke out of his trance-like state and greeted me with great enthusiasm.
Hey, Nick, glad you finally came to say hi. Most young lads are so closed off these days, eh?
Herbert, what are you doing here? I replied.
I'm coming on the ghost tour with you boys.
Oh, no, you're not. You're not invited, and besides, you need a ticket in order to tag along.
And such, I know this city inside and out. I know all the juiciest stories in town,
Herbert replied convincingly, as if he was some sort of gossip boy.
My name is Ghost Hunter Ernie, and it is my sole mission to crack every ghostly case in haunting in this town. This ghost tour is the perfect opportunity to make my name known. Because trust me, Nick, after tonight, this town will be ghost-free. Afterwards, we'll all meet at Weber's Alley to celebrate my achievements.
No, Herbert, and this time I mean it. Every single time you come on one of our trips, you always ruin it with your little shenanigans and schemes. We will not make the same mistake this time, and besides, we don't want our reputation to be associated with you, of all people.
Hey, come on, Nick. You boys don't even know I'm there. I like to lay low in the shadows and pop in only when necessary.
Doesn't matter. You never actually do what you say. Leave now, or I'm calling the cops.
I'm not leaving,
Herbert reprimanded as he just stood there, breathing heavily. Herbert looked absolutely ridiculous. He wore a pair of corduroy short shorts, along with a button-up flannel shirt, except he had the buttons undone to reveal his protruding potbelly. He wore one of those ghost vacuums on his back, like a backpack, the kind you saw in the cartoon Ghostbusters. On his feet, he wore an old pair of 1700s-style courthouse shoes, you know, the kind that George Washington, Ben Franklin, and other men who wore powdered wigs wore back in the day. He had gotten a new hairdo as well. He had shaved/buzzed the front and top of his hair, but left the sides and back to grow wild. I'm sure you can imagine how crazy this would look. Okay, that's it, I said. I'm calling the cops. I did just that. I dialed 911 and informed them about another Herbert incident inside the town's parking garage. 5 minutes later, a police car came around the corner, pulling up next to us. The officer spotted Herbert and got out to try and arrest him, but he did not succeed because Herbert took action. He proceeded to climb up on the railing and jump off the edge of the parking garage. He then deployed a bright neon orange hang glider and glided away. The whole town was able to witness him making his escape from above. Sorry, son, the officer told me. We'll get him next time. Don't sweat it, I replied. As long as he's gone for now, then that's all that matters. Though, unfortunately, this would not be the case. I went down to the main level and exited the parking garage. The temperature was now dropping, so I put on my jacket as I walked over to Weber's Alley, which is directly next to the garage. It seemed as if Colin, Steve, Frank, and Chad and I all arrived at the same time.
Well, bros, stated Chad. Seems like you bros are a little late for a bro change.
I was confused at first when Chad said this, but then I remembered that Chad thought 7:20 was the actual meetup time, when actually it was 7:30, the time it was at the moment. Chad thought we were late, but in reality it was him who was 10 minutes late. As per usual, as he too arrived at 7:30.
Man, this don't gonna be this fuck.
Steve exclaimed.
I'm trying to get all haunted and shit.
How about you, Frank? Are you ready for the tour? Asked Colin.
Yep. You got extra cheese balls. Just in case of any emergencies that we may or may not encounter.
Frank cackled. And you, Chad? I asked.
We see, Bruce. Ghosts aren't really my thing. We wouldn't want any bad energy interfering with the game's mindset. Now, will we, Bruce?
Chad, you always being the biggest bitch.
Chill, Steve, bro. Never hate on the next man. Especially when we've got homecoming just around the corner. An event where the game is of maximum priority.
Then what the fuck are you gonna do tonight? I asked him. You could've just stayed home.
Well, I would never leave my boys hanging. I'll tell you bros what. I'll chill here at Weber's Alley while y'all are on the tour. I'll have a table reserved for when you bros get back, where we can celebrate the night with a post-Ghost Expedition Games meal.
Ho, 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 now that sounds like a fine-ass plan to me, G.
Exclaimed Steve.
I'll tell you what, Chad, man. If this post-Ghost Games goods as you claim, I might take back what I said about you being a bitch.
And it was set. We all agreed on the plan that after Colin, Steve, Frank, and I were done with this ghost tour, we'd meet Chad inside Weber's Alley for some dinner. 10 minutes later, it was around 8 p.m. when the tour was scheduled to begin. Chad went to retreat inside Weber's Alley, whilst the rest of us showed the tour guide our tickets. Hello everybody, my name is Peter and I'll be y'all's ghost guide tonight, the tour guide announced. It's a little noisy and crowded here, so if y'all follow me, we'll head down a few blocks to the historic City Hall. We all followed him. It's almost all the way dark outside now, and there weren't nearly as many people over by the City Hall as there were by Weber's Alley. We passed by an old cemetery, and that was when Frank began having second thoughts.
I watched Ghost Hunting on TV. I don't think this is a really good idea.
He nervously said.
Come on, buzzman. It ought to be clear that you the biggest bitch in town. No one gives a fuck about your suspicions.
Plot Steve. Now this shut Frank up for a while. Okay everybody, here is our first stop of many tonight, the City Hall. Many grisly events happened here on these very grounds on which we stand, so keep your eyes peeled. The City Hall we were standing by was obviously built in the 1700s, so it was very old. It was made out of brick, and had a big fountain in the front courtyard area where we stood. The first story I'm going to tell you all tonight is about a young man by the name of Joseph M. Paulman. He was a farmer just outside the city. However, one season every other farmer's crops failed except for his. Suspicions arose as he was the only farmer in the surrounding area who had a bountiful harvest that year. It was long before he was accused by many of performing black magic so as to make all other crops fail except his. The city police arrested him and imprisoned him inside this here hall, as there was yet no jailhouse built in the town at this time period. Joseph was held in the city hall attic for 14 days. When the governor came upstairs to release him, they found him dead, hanging from the ceiling via rope. The townsfolk buried his body in the cemetery around back, and some say that to this very day, the ghost of Joseph M. Paulman still lurks the grounds, preying on unsuspecting guests.
Heh, man, that shit even that scary. If I was that motherfucker back in the day, I would've just beaten their ass.
Exclaimed Steve.
Did somebody say ghost?
A gurgly voice shouted from afar. Who said that? Said Peter. It's none of us, I replied. None of us could locate the source of the sound until somebody thought to look up.
Up there!
A woman exclaimed, pointing to the roof of a nearby set of homes. Up on the roof was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. He stood triumphantly in some sort of Superman pose with his hands on his hips and his head proudly facing the sky. You! Get down from there! Peter shouted.
Fear not, citizens, for Ghost Hunter Ernie has arrived!
Herbert yelled. We were all shocked beyond belief. Herbert then did the unimaginable. He leaped off the roof and redeployed his hang glider. He then landed right in the middle of the circle we were standing in. You need to leave now, or I'll be forced to alert the city authorities, Peter said.
No need for the authorities to protect you when you have me! Don't worry, ladies. I'll catch this ghost for you.
Herbert, stop! I shouted. Herbert didn't listen though. He took off running and barged inside the city hall, which was already closed for the day. Though it was weird because if it were closed, wouldn't the doors be locked? Herbert was able to enter it easily though. Next thing we knew, Peter was on the phone with the police, who arrived 5 minutes later. Let's make this quick, an officer said. Where is he? He's inside the hall, sir, Peter replied. The police had to pick the lock to the city hall, which again was weird as Herbert entered as if the doors were unlocked. The police then went inside, We witnessed them flick on every single light from inside the windows as they worked on clearing the building. The rest of us waited outside anxiously. Soon, the police came back outside and informed us that the building was empty. They did say, however, that every single room in the city hall was trashed. Tables were flipped over, sinks were overflowing, toilets clogged with who knows what, etc. They also said that some sort of strange ectoplasm was coating the walls, which is weird. Maybe some ghosts or whatnot. The city hall would unfortunately have to close down for a week or two while the custodians tidied up all the rooms so they're fit for use. "You guys have a good night," the officer said, hopping back in the car, speeding off. None of us could believe it. 2 Herbert incidents in under an hour, and the police had failed at both. Peter didn't say much else about what had just happened. I think he was just a bit shaken, as we all were, and just wanted to move on to the next location. Peter then led us down a few back alleys until we reached one house in particular which stood out from the rest. It was clearly from the time period of the American Revolution. Even though it was marked as a historic site, it still looked unkept and run down in many ways. This used to be the home of Betsy Burlock. She was a widow who had inherited quite the fortune back in the day. However, as her husband had passed, she grew lonely and eventually went insane in her old age. She rarely seemed to get sick and physically seemed to be doing fine. However, one night, an old fat tax collector came by to collect the weekly fees. In Betsy's deteriorating mental state, she murdered the man by jumping a barrel on his head from the second floor. Nowadays, some of the locals say that you can still see the silhouettes of the fat tax collector lurking in the upstairs windows of this very house, explained Peter grimacingly. I will admit, the story was pretty good. Peter did his job incredibly well. Then, however, somebody spotted something that would make this surely a night to remember. "Look!" a man shouted. "It's the tax collector!" We were all confused, as we thought the man was lying just to stir up attention. Although we were confirmed wrong when he looked up at the second floor and saw that a light was on in one of the windows. Inside that window, we witnessed a chubby silhouette with crazy hair dancing. Wow! In the 30-plus years I've been hosting ghost tours, I have never seen something as clear and astounding as this, Peter exclaimed as he got out his phone and began recording, as did everyone else.
"Look, Steve! The ghost!"
Frank pointed out.
"You can't be fooling me with that shit, Buzzman! I ain't convinced."
I had to agree with Steve on this one, as Colin and I knew it was really up. "What should we do?" I whispered to Colin. "I don't know. We can't just let him stay in there." "Exactly. He's just going to destroy another historical site," I said. Everyone else in the tour was convinced 100% that the figure inside the window was actually the ghost of the fat tax collector. I was not sure what to do, and so I figured I could at least snap a photo of the figure. I think I made a smart move on that one because A, I can use it as evidence to call the police, and B, I can save it to my memories too, just as something to look back on though, mostly reason A. "Should we call the police again?" Colin asked. "No," I replied. "They've been disturbed twice tonight already because of things related to us. They're probably burnt out and tired. Besides, Herbert isn't actually doing anything bad this time. In fact, he's actually making the ghost tour better. People think he's a ghost." "I guess you're right," Colin said. Something we'd soon learn, however, is that you should never assume the best when it comes to Herbert Ernie. The ghost, quote-unquote, just kept there in the window, still dancing. I think the group found it cool at first, but we're getting bored now. Even the tour guide is getting sick of it. "Okay, everybody, on to the next spot," said Peter. However, as we began to wrap up what we were doing by that old house, the figure in the window took note that we were getting ready to leave. We witnessed it leave the upstairs window and head back towards the stairs. We all froze. We heard the apparent sound of clunky footsteps racing down the stairs from inside the house. Then, the front door swung open and the mysterious ghost stepped out onto the porch. That ghost was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself, looking more crazy and unhinged than ever before.
"Even so soon for these? I was just wrapping up my work in this house, but alas, it was to no use. Those ghosts are sticky. But don't worry, Ghost Hunter Ernie can still come through for your lads. How about we buggy our way on over to River's Alley and celebrate the achievements of Ghost Hunter Ernie?"
"You again," Peter shouted. "I thought I told you to leave. The cops are on their way." Herbert then took off before disappearing into a dark alleyway.
Meet you boys at River's Alley,"
he shouted as he jogged. The vacuum pack's still on. Peter didn't waste any time. He had the police on speed dial. However, the police informed Peter that they might take a little more time than usual to get there because of an incident with the coffee machine. Though, I secretly believe that they just didn't feel like coming to deal with another Herbert incident. That's when Colin and I remembered. Chad, he was still at Weber's Alley and Herbert was headed right for him. "Come on guys, we gotta go now and save Chad," I told Steve and Frank.
"Why, man?
We just get into the juicy shit.
But Colin and I took off. Steve and Frank had no choice but to follow us. We knew that Herbert wasn't a very fast runner. We just had to make it to Weber's Alley before Herbert did, so we could warn everyone about him. Colin pulled up the restaurant on Google Maps and we made a mad dash directly there. And 5 minutes later, we arrived. We ran inside and found Chad sitting at a booth that he'd reserved for us.
How was the tour, bros?
It was good, but we have... Colin began.
Spill the beans, bro. What went down?
I think Colin was about to tell Chad and warn him about Herbert, but then looked around at all the people having a relaxing evening at dinner, and figured it'd be best not to ruin anyone's night. Plus, we reasoned that Herbert was probably bluffing about going to Weber's Alley, and luckily just said what he said, just to attract attention to himself.
We saw a ghost!
Frank squeaked.
Let's see it. I think I made the right choice not going, as the future of the games is now secure,
replied Chad. Frank then pulled out his phone and showed everyone the video of Herbert dancing from literally less than 10 minutes ago. Chad looked astonished.
Seems like you bros had a bruised spooky time tonight. I'm surprised a ghost showed up on camera. Anyway, I say we flag ourselves down a waiter and get our post-ghost gains on.
That's a fine-ass plan to me, G.
Steve mentioned. A waiter then came to our table and took our orders. I ordered a bison steak and potatoes. Colin ordered the salmon platter and vegetables. Chad ordered the world's largest donut, which is a dessert item, by the way. Frank ordered the cheeseburger sliders, and finally, Steve ordered the chicken wing trough, which looked disgusting.
Yo, man, these wings be spicy as a bitch. Perfect for my ghost abs,
Steve stated as he lifted up his shirt, revealing his stomach. His abs really were ghost-like, as they were nowhere to be seen.
That's a hot take, bro, but I wouldn't jump to conclusions quite yet. My donut had yet to be tasted, but once it does, then the abs will really be coming into play,
said Chad as he creased his football shirt, revealing the outline of his abs. The weird part, however, was that his abs looked extremely block-like, like plastic almost. Although I didn't question it, because Chad does claim a pretty grueling workout routine with an on-par diet as well. We all dug into our food next. It all tasted pretty good for the most part, and we're all enjoying ourselves, till we heard the sound of the front doors swing open. Inside stepped no one other than Herbert Ernie himself.
Sorry, everybody. Ghost Hunter Ernie ran into some trouble on the way here with some extra Frankie ghosts. But luckily, I showed them who is the best. Me. Anyway, it's time to celebrate.
Herbert then made a direct dash towards the table at which we were sitting. The restaurant staff made an effort to stop him, but didn't catch him in time. Herbert climbed on top of our table and stood up, his feet planted directly in Colin's food. Oh, come on! Why is it always me? Exclaimed Colin, his food now ruined. Herbert, what are you doing? You need to leave now, I ordered.
Don't be silly, Nick. You know exactly why I'm here. You see, all the lovely townsfolk have gathered here at Weber's Alley tonight to celebrate the accomplishments of Ghost Hunter Ernie.
Don't worry, everyone. I'm calling the cops, said Colin. Everyone in the restaurant was now shocked beyond imagination. No need. They're already on their way, a waiter replied. Herbert then took massive action and proceeded to do the unimaginable. He reached into his vacuum backpack and pulled out a long rope. He then lassoed said rope in a loop and got it caught around one of the ceiling fans. Then, the ceiling fan mysteriously began to swing faster, causing Herbert to begin oscillating around the restaurant in a 360-degree motion. He took note of the movement and then deployed his paraglider, which took up way too much room to be inside of a confined restaurant space. Herbert picked up pace, and before we knew it, he was going around in massive circles, reaching for people at their tables. Herbert screamed as he swung more and more out of control. He then switched on the vacuum part of his vacuum backpack and used the hose feature to stick on people's faces as he swung by, the power from the vacuum causing him to swing even faster. Eventually, he caught some food inside of the vacuum, and next thing we knew, bits and chunks of mashed potatoes and ketchup were being flung around the restaurant, landing on people's faces. Everybody was freaking out. The power then proceeded to go out and the police arrived on scene. Herbert wasn't hard to locate though, as his vacuum backpack also happened to be glow in the dark. Herbert was arrested and taken away. I couldn't believe it. Herbert just ruined dinner. Weber's Alley had to be closed for a while to recover from what Herbert had done. The rest of us just went home and decided it'd be best just to cancel the night early. I remember going to bed that night quite traumatized from everything involving Herbert and all. And that then concludes Hauntings of Ernie.